these photos are really old. They're from maybe a year and a half ago. And I was in Nashville. I was doing some street photography with the M246 Monochrom. Probably my favorite Leica, my favorite way to shoot. The moment I picked it up, I was like, this is something else. The M246 Monochrom is a low-bidder hated camera, and I think it's because people tend to not spend enough time using it. And that's fine. People have a right to like or dislike whatever they want. The interface of this camera, in regards to how you use it like an analog film camera. You have manual focus, you've got aperture priority, but for most of the time I find myself actually using the shutter manually. So shooting this at night, just like shooting a film camera at night. Now if you're used to the rangefinder focusing system, that does present a little bit of an issue when you're shooting at night if you're manually focusing. And I was shooting most of these with I think a Zeiss 35, and some of them might have been shot with a TT Artisan 28mm lens. You know, when you're shooting at night, you're fairly wide open compared to shooting during the day. And if you're shooting 35, if you're shooting tighter than 28, you can't really do the hyperfocal focusing or the scale focusing. It's not called zone focusing. That's wrong. Anyway, now the M246 specifically has this issue that Leica has since solved, that it clips the highlights pretty much immediately. If you've clipped the highlights and you put the raw files into Lightroom or Capture One or whatever, and Adobe's evil. But anyway, that's an aside. You notice that what you saw in camera in your image review is what you get on the digital files. It's gone. The highlights are gone. If you've clipped them, you clip them. That's just how it works on the M246. You just have to figure out how to roll it off with your curve gracefully, and just try not to pay attention to it. If you print your photos out, it's pretty obvious that you've clipped, and you've clipped hard. And the clipping is not graceful at all. It's just sliced right off the top. The highlights are decapitated. You have to find a somewhat contrasty or bright patch to manually focus the rangefinder and take a picture. So it's a lot more involved at night. That's why a lot of people are really good with their scale focusing, and they find a lens and they kind of get used to where the different distances are based on where the focus tab is on the camera. So some people are really, really good with that. I change lenses too often and focal lengths too often, between 35, 40, and 50 usually. I do like 28 as well, but it doesn't really lend itself to that muscle memory. So focusing, you have to kind of go by eye. So you can't really, shoot stealth, and I don't really shoot in that way anymore anyway. So, not a huge deal. I don't really care about not being noticed. People are not my main subject anyway. This is kind of just general purpose practice for me. And I do find the monochrome rangefinder to be just really, really good at keeping you honest about just putting in the work. The other thing about shooting it at night, it is a noticeable piece of kit, so to speak. It looks luxury. It looks expensive. So it does attract attention regardless of what you do. And it's, it's kind of loud. I'm not going to lie. That shutter. Oh, it doesn't have a battery in it right now. I'm actually charging the battery. But the shutter on this camera is actually fairly loud. And it's just hard to be all that stealthy with a rangefinder like a camera. Now the Leica Q, which is not a rangefinder, I know it has a leaf shutter. It's very quiet. It's whisper quiet. And that camera is much more stealthy compared to any of the rangefinders. So, I was just kind of walking down Broadway in Nashville, where all the bars are and stuff. You enjoy, you know, music and alcohol, you'll have a good time. However, enjoy photography and walking, luckily. So, you know, these are fairly generic shots. Some of them me just crossing the crosswalks. And one of the cool things about Nashville, downtown Nashville, is they have the diagonal crossings. So it's a little bit, you know, Shibuya in Japan. So you can take, you know, the old, I'm at a busy intersection, I'm going to cross and spray and pray. But I didn't do that. I actually stopped in the middle, put my camera up, and took some of these shots. And then, you know, kind of just walking up and down and stopping at honky tonks for a minute and checking out some of the live acts. And, you know, towards the end of the night, there's this guy, you know, most downtowns have snake guy. So I got a shot of that, just kind of had to. So speaking about the files and editing them and all that fun stuff, the images come out at lower ISOs, I'd say, up to about 800, even 1600. You get a really robust file, and what you can do is you can lift those shadows up a lot. You can save your highlights. So if I'm shooting something like aperture priority, because a lot of people shoot in aperture priority, I guess I can use that as an example. So I go ahead and I expose, if I'm in a high contrast scene, I will go ahead and I will almost expose for the sky. You know, I'll give it a stop or two for middle gray, and I'll get my image back, and it's like, yeah, you've clipped like all your shadows, but no, you can go into Lightroom and really lift your shadows with these files, and you can really come up with very film-like images. And the sensor is so clean, I find myself lifting the shadows and then doing some work with the curves, and then I have to add texture, and I rarely do that with my digital color photos. I rarely add texture. There's just so little noise, really there's zero noise, that I have to add tons of texture with the texture slider, and I have to add, you know, a bunch of clarity just to make these images a little bit crunchy, because film, you know, film has grain, it has character, it has texture. With the monochrome files, you have to add that stuff in post. This is, to me at least, this is not a JPEG camera, and the actual function of using the camera, a lot like shooting film. It is. And I think that's a main reason people enjoy shooting these cameras. Most night photography's got neon, and Broadway, where I was shooting, had that, but I was like, you know what, I'll save that for another time. And I did get to shoot tungsten Kodak Vision 3 film, and I pushed it to stop, and I'll do a video about that later as well. But yeah, if you've got a monochrome camera, or shoot black and white film, go ahead and take that out at night, you know, open it up to f2 and you know, see what you get. It's a fun exercise, and I genuinely just enjoyed walking around and taking photos with it. But anyway, more monochrome and film videos. Gonna start knocking them out.